there is beauty in sitting with other men. Can I bring that solidness and that groundedness that I may experience in the men's group? Can I bring that in my relationships with women, with other men as well? There are men that are not, that don't care about self-reflection, that are not willing to put in the effort to go sit in a group or go work through whatever they need to work through. And they're just not open to that.
Mhm.
But I still need to have a relationship with them. Can I still bring that modeling there? Forget with other women, but can I, at
Mhm.
least as a man, can I bring it with another man? And still, even if we don't have that same solid, kind of understanding of how we're going to communicate, can I still hold my truth there? They might not see the
Mhm.
value in it, but can I hold that solid ground for them?
Into the fire, here we go. Into the fire, head to toe. Into the fire to be seen. Into the fire to
Hi, this is Mark A. Lewis. This is the Sacred Village podcast. Today we're getting into some interesting territory for me. It's another very close friend of mine, another man from the men's circle that I'm a part of. I'm going to introduce this guy right away. I'm not going to do much of a preamble. So I'm going to introduce my good friend Faizan. Faizan, if you could actually tell the viewers your last name and just give a little bit of an introduction of yourself, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, my name's Faizan Sabzaali, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Expansion Project. My background, though, has been in technology for the last close to 3 decades. Guess aging myself here. I've been in this seeker mode for as much as I can remember. I love connecting with Mark around that aspect of my life. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, Mark.
I couldn't remember how to pronounce your last name, which is why I gave that over to you. And I think maybe that's an interesting or an appropriate segue because it's a name that I'm not familiar with. My brain has a hard time, remembering the intonation, the syllables, and how it's pronounced. And the reason is because we come from different cultures. We come from different cultures that have a different language as their origin. And you come from a long ways away from Pakistan, if I remember correctly. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah. Born in Pakistan, grew up in Chicago, and living here in BC, kind of interior BC now, with multiple travels, and it's an interesting aspect of life, right? Like for me, especially being an immigrant, um, I joke around like when people are trying to pronounce my name, and then they mispronounce it or whatever, and some people care enough to ask, right? Like, hey, did I pronounce it
Hmm.
right? Or some people just don't, and it's been okay. But I notice sometimes there's guilt that shows up, like, oh, I don't know how to pronounce your name right, and then you know, I, I,
Hmm.
I I tend to make a joke saying, I've been called worse, so it's okay. But it's this fine line that we walk, right? I remember when I was young, and had like one of my first jobs, and they wanted to give me a different name because, well, he's like, well, nobody's going to be able to pronounce your name, and it was another, I'm a brown man. So another brown person saying, let's call you, I forget what it was. I know they used to call my older brother Frank. And I was like, no, I'm good with my name. You could call me by
Hmm.
name. And they're like, well, they're not going to be able to, but like, you know, uh, I'm like, I'd rather you mispronounce my name than me try to take on another personality. So
Yeah.
it's been an interesting journey, even in just right, like what's in a name and how those names are pronounced, how the names are taken, respected, held, all of those things, right? Like there's a history, all of that thing that kind of plays in, and like you said, like us being different cultures, how do we navigate that, right? That it's not gonna expect you, and this is that fine line that I'm talking about, right? Like I'm not gonna expect you to. I don't think I have an expectation of people knowing how to pronounce my name,
Hmm.
but I have an expectation that I should know the the Western names, be able to pronounce the Western names at least. So I don't know if that makes sense, but this is that line we walk, right? Sometimes when we're coming from these different cultures and trying to not make it mean too much, but also hold on to our values and culture and all of those things as well.
Yeah. So that balance, like if there's not as much of an expectation on the other person, which is a generous, aspect of who you are, like just to be able to go with the flow. If he doesn't pronounce my name right, I correct him. And if he's not really interested, he or she is not really interested in pronouncing it right the next time, or they don't really have an interest in me at all, period, because maybe I'm just too much work for their brain to sort of think of integrating into their view of the world, their paradigm, perhaps. But you're moving here. You're living as a minority, and so you have that expectation. Imagining this is part of the reason that your expectation on yourself to kind of assimilate, to a degree, or be a part of something, a part of a culture without losing your identity. I mean, I'm speculating here, so maybe you can clean that up if there's anything that stands out. But I'm also curious, though, about that moment that you were given the choice to decide whether or not you wanted a Anglophone name. So a name that would help you integrate and assimilate, so it wouldn't be so difficult for other people to accept you into an understanding or a paradigm that you're a safe person to be around. I'm imagining, what's your take on that? What are the kind of the nuances of this experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, the assimilation part is it's an interesting aspect, right? Because we're obviously coming into a country. At least I am. I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for every every immigrant experience. So I'll just speak for myself here. Me. I remember coming into at that time into the United States, or now into Canada, knowing it's like I can speak the language, but I can't change my skin color, right? Like, so the expectation sometimes even just start there, right? Like, because I can't hide. I can't hide physically, at least, from that. And obviously I want to personally respect the cultures that I'm walking into. And it was an interesting learning experience for me, going to Chicago and then even coming to Canada. Like, we lived in Calgary, Vancouver, and kind of the different towns around. It was a journey because what is somebody's culture? What is a city's culture? What is a country's culture? Especially in North America, it's so like there's so many different cultures coming together. And I'm not even, it was a learning experience for me to how, like, what am I assimilating to, right? And kind of what are the value systems and whatnot. There are certain things obviously I'm very proud of now being a Canadian and holding some of those values, seeing how, like, a value of safety, let's say, right? And I know there's this thinking sometimes that happens, like, well, we're not safe. But again, like, having experienced safety issues in Pakistan, or even in Chicago, understanding kind of our perspective on what is considered safe, what is not. And I'm not saying that, there isn't violence or anything that happens in Canada, but that expectation of safety, that I will be safe and I should be safe, was new to me. Right. And it was a new expectation. And so to not to take that for granted, right? Like, and so I hold that always close to my heart. But then also, with the name, especially when they wanted to give me a different name, and just for work purposes, really, it's like, what am I willing to give up for that safety? Or for that freedom. So I think, I don't know if it was a conscious pushback, I'm not going to say it was, but I remember like they're saying, yeah, you should have a different name. I'm like, no, like it just was, it was very clear. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think if I can learn how to pronounce a name, I'm sure I can hope that other people can also take that uh, take that um, or make that effort. And if they don't want to, I'm I'll move on. There's
Mm-hmm.
it's not it's not worth the fight for me. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
fight for you to pronounce my name right, uh
Mm-hmm.
but you might not be my person. That's okay if that's the
Mm-hmm.
case. But so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but there is this um in my mind these two different identities that I at least especially as you know kind of first generation immigrant that I know, and I was really young as well. So I've grown up here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
I've really embraced that culture, right? I've really embraced the values, and to be able to walk, it's a different thing. Um, I wouldn't say it's a difficult thing, but it's a line I still walk to this day. It's like, you know, which culture do I belong to, really?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it feels like I belong to both. Sometimes it feels like I don't belong to any. And that's the work, right? Of finding our authentic self, really.
Yeah, it's interesting for me how as much as I can relate to that, the experience that I had that would be similar in a certain way would be when I started to delve into indigenous traditions and ceremonies and communities. I was looking for something that was very obviously missing, and I was drawn to that in a way that I wasn't just guessing. It was a very clear calling. And but through the community aspect, when you show up to a ceremony that is run by indigenous people and you have a history where, I represent, to many of these people, until they get to know me, they don't know if I'm safe. They don't know if I'm coming with an agenda to take something from them, even to take their tradition somehow. Even by being a part of the tradition, is this person going to acquire medicine and then somehow steal it, somehow use it in a way that will affect the individual, the indigenous person and their people in a negative way? So the community aspect was very tricky, and I certainly went in there without a tether, like without feeling like I was a part of something meaningful on a deeper level, like on a spiritual level. And I felt like I found it. And so I would wonder, is this my tribe? And it took some time to realize that no, I'm not a guest in a sense that, somebody that's coming in just to observe and learn and then leave and go back to their people and share what they've learned through that lens. I wasn't a guest. I was there, with a calling on a deeper level, which made it even more complicated. On the social front, I wasn't indigenous. I wasn't one of those people. And so I was left alone again. But what I was left to do was to take the teachings in a similar way as a guest, even though, like I said, it was a paradox because I was a guest and I also wasn't a guest. So there was a paradox in it. But to be able to leave, having had that experience, and then bring that to a group of people, so my people that hadn't yet formed yet, or were just barely forming and just barely kind of dipping their toes in this new way of being, this new sense of community, this new us. This is who I am. This is who my people are. And, while navigating certainly the us versus them consciousness, which is what this group of people that are forming are certainly very aware of and very suspicious of when it comes up inside of them. And the people that are gathering, they're going to be showing the mirror to others in that community when that comes up, because that's not a value and it's not real. In a way it's real, and in a way it's totally fiction. So, coming back to your experience here, we're in men's circle together. You're a spiritual person. Are you also a religious person? You got a lot of different hats too. So I feel like we maybe can relate to this, like these paradoxes that we've had to navigate in terms of on our path of self-discovery. Yeah, that was a little long-winded, but it's kind of a nuanced thing that we're delving into. So, yeah, I'll pass this back to you though, Faizan.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for sharing that experience as well. I feel like identity plays such an important part in our lives, right? And then that real human need to belong and find our tribe when, the original hope is that our family of origin would be the tribe. And for many, or maybe for some, maybe not all, turns out that our family of origin is just that. It's a family of origin. It doesn't feel like I belong there for whatever reason, right? And I have to take responsibility for that. And so then we go out looking for that group, right? And then we start taking on the identities of the different groups that we're gonna try out, right? And so, as little kids, it might be different school groups. So a group of kids that we used to play, like we used to just go out during whatever time we could find. We'd just be playing American football outside. Or basketball, or those kids that, were really into studying. And I'm like, okay, I really need to be academic as well. And I'd hang out with those kids. And then going to university, going to work, and then looking for, again, continuously moving through the different groups, religion being one, obviously. There are any religious communities that we belong to or we started with. Along with all of those things, right? And at a certain point, while we're looking to belong, we're also looking at our own identity. Who am I? Right. So from a name perspective, again, that was like, no, I don't want to give that up. And so I don't want to give up me. But the question that usually doesn't get asked in any scenario or any group is, who am I? Who am I? Not just in this group, not just as a Pakistani-born Muslim man living in Canada now, right? It's who am I beyond that? Who am I as it relates to you as a person? So you being Mark, right? Like, so you and I, who am I in that relationship? And sometimes in that relationship, the past that our forefathers and our ancestors have had, those that history sometimes comes up as well, and sometimes unconsciously, but it does come up for all of us, right? Like that, can I trust this person? The other, can I trust the other? and there've been so many stories and true stories based on truth that the other has hurt us in the past. And so we're really, when we're trying to, I think there's this thing out there right now, right? Like, well, we just have to be our authentic self. I said, what the hell does that mean? We haven't navigated, we have to navigate all of these things, right? I just can't, like if in our men's group, I can't expect you to know all of my customs, my religious, my family, personal cultures, right? Like your customs, I can't expect you to know that. And I can't expect to know your customs. And yet we are supposed to work together. We're supposed to live together. We're supposed to be together, right? And so we have to be able to navigate these different scenarios. And sometimes it's in conflict. Sometimes it's in ignorance. And sometimes it's in cooperation. But we have to be able to navigate that, right? And then say, okay, after I navigate this, or while I'm navigating this, I'm also defining who am I, right? I want to be more than just a man that follows a particular faith. I want to be more than just, Mark's buddy, right? Like we try to continue working through these identity challenges. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that from your perspective.
Well, the first time we met was in a men's circle. For me, that is a signifier of common ground. And then I found out that you did the mankind project initiation. I haven't done that myself, but I know I have very good friends who have, and I do identify it as a rite of passage that for me speaks volumes because I've seen what it's done for these other men. And I know that the rites of passage that I've done, which would be similar in spirit, let's say, maybe not similar in nature, but similar in spirit. And I know what they've done for me. And for you to be drawn to that, that's a signifier. That's a big signifier for me and that's less of a signifier of safety. It's not like I would otherwise feel less safe, but it's a signifier of, I want to get to know this person. You know, it's a nudge in that direction because of the common ground that I'm, you know, in my mind, I suppose I'm guessing is there, but it's probably more than that because then I hear you speak and I see something in your eyes. You know, there's a gentle wisdom. So there's all sorts of things going on that have nothing to do with race because all of those things are the same signifiers, no matter if the person is purple, black, white, green, yellow. It doesn't matter. Those signifiers are priorities. They're primary signifiers for me. So I suppose having a spiritual path for myself, getting closer, you know, to finding my authentic self has changed the criteria. And I'm just putting this together now, by the way. It's changed the criteria of the signifiers that help me feel safe and also drawn to get to know somebody, while the old signifiers, the color of a person's skin, you know, let's say their religious background, they would have been higher on the list, the hierarchy, on the list of priorities in terms of the effect that they would have on my understanding of whether I'm drawn to somebody or not. It's the signifiers of safety and, you know, spiritual connection and, you know, that funnel that just kind of changes over time as we get closer to our hearts. And now, you know, we sit together in circle and we're getting to know each other. We've done it for a year. And the things that come out of your mouth sometimes are just there's this deep wisdom. So there's also this elder in training energy that I feel, you know, that I feel a kinship with. And the other things have absolutely no relevance.
Yeah. So there's that fine line that we were talking about, right? I think we can. I think it's important, at least for me. I know it's important that I find common values with other people that go beyond those markers, that go beyond our childhood status in society as rich, poor, or whatever in between, beyond the color of our skins, right? So obviously they're because otherwise those become just blockers, right? Well, I can never relate to you because we're not from the same background, right? Because otherwise, like I don't find that to be the truth. That's important. And while, again, holding the importance of your experience as well. So holding my experience of being a brown man in North America, being an immigrant, not born here, not all of those experiences add to the wisdom that I'm hoping that I'm bringing, right? That you're talking about. And same thing from your background, same thing from like indigenous background. And you don't know, you know, and I don't expect you to either, but you also haven't experienced my life. And I haven't experienced your life, right? And the struggles that you've had, struggles I've had, and you know we've in those groups we've talked about some of those similar struggles, obviously, right? And then there's some struggles that I cannot relate to, and that's okay. But I know I can sit with you because we believe in growth. We believe in that unified field that I feel like we all belong to. And so I can hold on to that common value to go beyond what I don't understand, right? And I think what happens is that otherness, and it happens to, you know, even within relationships. So it can happen with my wife. My wife grew up differently, had different parenting styles, all of those things. And that otherness starts coming in the way and becomes conflict rather than saying, okay, let's focus on what we actually value. And we might do it differently. We have different experiences. I have different fears of the quote unquote the white man, right? But I could hopefully, and I don't expect you to have that. And and I also cannot experience what it feels like for other people to be coming in, right? Either. And I'm sure we'll touch on that as well. But it's how do we again find that common ground, common value? So for us, it's part of being the men's group, holding each other accountable, right, to our growth, while holding the fact that you and I may not understand each other completely, all of our
Mm-hmm.
experiences completely. And I don't need
Mm-hmm.
you to. I don't expect you to. Even if they're like just between me and my brother, we have had a different immigrant experience, even though we're part of the same race, same religion, right? My older brother was older. He had different expectations. As soon as he moved, he kind of started working. So as a 14-year-old kid, he had a totally different experience than a 9-year-old kid moving to the West. And I don't understand the struggles that he went through, but I know I can hold him still. And I know he can hold me, kind of in that mode. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I just wanted to kind of add that as well here.
I think that's really beautiful, and I really appreciate you bringing back the comparison of partnership, because I think of the I guess the thresholds that I've had to go through with my partner that have to do with exactly what we're talking about. That safety and being curious about the other person, not projecting onto them what you believe to be their experience, what you believe to be their intention, based on past experiences, trauma in the family system, all that stuff. It's very complex with every relationship. This is a bit of a segue, but we wouldn't know each other if you didn't go through certain thresholds, like in terms of the men's circle and the rite of passage, and I didn't go through certain thresholds. Like for me, it was going through the indigenous traditions and ayahuasca ceremonies and different thresholds of expansion of my heart. The two of us wouldn't know each other. I have a brown friend who lives close. There's so much of his story, so much of his culture that he kept. I don't know that he kept it secret, but it just wasn't. We're all a group of friends, and you stop seeing color in that context, but it's still a context that is, I want to say, rides on the surface a little bit more than I would like. And
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we do compartmentalize, right? Like there's things, yes, because you and I know each other doesn't mean I'm going to share everything. And I
mm-hmm,
think there is this discernment, right, piece that sometimes gets missed. It's a, uh, you know, connection doesn't always mean always share and always be, right? Like sometimes it
mm-hmm,
means stepping away. Sometimes it means going closer.
mm-hmm,
And as human beings, even though we might be part of the same circle, right? Like, I know growing up, I had friends of different races and all of those things, but I didn't know what was going on at their homes,
mm-hmm,
right? Like we beyond just the race factor, I didn't know what was happening in their homes, right? Like I heard, kind of, later on in life, like one of my friends was getting beat at home constantly, right? And I couldn't tell, like it was,
mm-hmm,
he would cover up all of the bruises and all of those things. And
mm-hmm,
now, you know, because we're part of the same group doesn't mean we know everything. And obviously, are we safe enough for him to allow for that vulnerability, right? And I
mm-hmm,
think I find as we grow older and the groups we belong to, right, like the groups you and I belong to, there are pieces of me I can share vulnerably. There's pieces of you can share, hopefully, with
mm-hmm,
me, that go deeper than just that surface level experience. Oh yeah, I'm
mm-hmm,
married, I have kids. I struggle with raising kids, and I struggle with my work. That
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I think we all have that, but like, okay, going deeper than that, I struggle sometimes because I don't feel accepted. Right, to be able to say that is different, and
mm-hmm,
not to have you fix it. And then when you share something with me, the expectation isn't that I'm going to step in and fix it for you, but no, we can just hold that conversation. I think that's where,
mm-hmm,
the vulnerability isn't I find like it's not in sharing, right? Because I think a lot of us, oh yeah, I can share vulnerably with you, but am I as an individual able to take responsibility and go forward in healing that. I think that's where true vulnerability comes in, rather than just sharing. I don't know if that makes sense, but like just
Mm-hmm.
sharing the thoughts, not expecting anybody to fix it, and just owning it and then saying, okay, how do I and if I need to lean on, let's say I need to lean on you for something, I can, right? But the expectation of the fix isn't there. And so I don't know if I took that thread somewhere else, but I do find like groups that we belong to, again, it's we don't we don't know everything about everyone, and that's okay. We could
Mm-hmm.
still find those values, and we could still be discerning. We can still hold some of our as we feel safer, maybe we can share that. And then, and I know for me in a group like this, or even in a family, right? Like my wife has had issues with abuse, right? Like with men, and kind of, so a loud voice from me, activates her. And now she's working on that. But I can also, if I care enough, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
care enough about the other person, I'll say, okay, how do I hold this? Is there
Yeah.
anything I can do, right? And I'm sure you've had to do that in your journey through the
Yeah.
indigenous communities. Is like, okay, how do I hold this? How do I not not change myself? How do I transform this that says that I care? I care
Yeah.
enough to try to learn to change my behaviors, possibly all of those
Yeah.
things that I'm still working on. I'm not totally perfect. Go ask my wife what happened yesterday, she'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But is it, am I willing to try? I think that's all I could ask for, that's all I can look for, right? Yeah.
It's maybe not front and center in terms of values as the most obvious and the most important, but it just very well may be, even though it's a bit more subtle, which is a willingness to grow, a willingness to kind of meet in the middle and to make corrections and to self-reflect and to navigating these relationships with women. Like we're in deep with somebody that comes from a very different place energetically and
Hmm.
experientially, to grow up, to be a part of this culture, to be a part of any culture as a woman is going to be very different than the experience of a man. And so to come together that way and to work out to show our vulnerabilities and to show our needs, whether we like it or not, because that vulnerability can be difficult even with our closest ally, theoretically, it's still a process of, but having that willingness to kind of self-reflect and to try to level up, to be firm with some, at times firm, but without raising our voice. Like, what does that look like to be super solid, without having to raise our voice, to feel the trigger, that deep abandonment trigger, or that threat of like, you just, tapped into something sacred for me, that feels, like a betrayal. I'm holding that vibration. I'm trying to hold that story, keep that story in check, because there's also something very illusory about that story. Because I don't
Hmm.
know the intention. I have to, despite how overwhelmed my body's feeling, how do I stay in a place of curiosity and connection? And for me, like you said, and I'm not there, I have to leave the room sometimes. I just have to, when the trigger's interfering with my ability to be centered, I'm learning to just walk away sooner. And we know, Chris,
Yeah.
my partner and I know each other so well that we know we'll be back, and that's what's happening. It might sting. It's like, oh, that fucker just
Hmm.
left. But we also know that that's okay. They beat me to the right thing to do, and thank you for that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And sometimes the thing to do is like, I'm not the one to fix this, right? I'm not the one to be able to hold this and to know, especially in that moment, if I can't hold it, well, I got to trust that somebody else can. Right? And I
Yeah.
think that's a piece that gets missed sometimes, because a lot of us, lot of men, I feel like, have this savior mentality,
Mm-hmm.
that the women are looking to us for, and this is a talk about hetero relationship, that the women are looking at us to save them. That
Mm-hmm.
that's not the ask here, right? Like, I think the ask is for us to grow together and be actually, I think the word you used was in partnership, right? Like to be in
Mm-hmm.
that true partnership. And again, true partnership doesn't mean 50-50. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just what is it required moment by moment. And allowing for that, allowing us ourselves to grow through that basically. And I think it's important to remember, right? Like whether we sit in a men's group, we work through any sort of relationship with outside in the world, it's it's still a relationship. It's still
Mm-hmm.
a moment by moment decision, moment by moment ask. I think it's really important. I know that's been a really a learning, an important learning for me, is any relationship, what is required, not yesterday, not what it required yesterday, not what it might require in the future, but what does it require right now?
Yeah. And I think we can see, just taking a step back, bird's eye view of our conversation, like it doesn't take long for our story of origin, our story of, religious background or cultural background. Once you're in a men's circle, or once you're talking to somebody who's, when we get a little bit deeper, that stuff falls to the wayside so quickly. And now we have this common ground of being men in
Yeah.
relationship, and the nuance of that struggle, and of the fruits that bear also, for sure. But when we're coming together in circle, it's often to kind of distill and to kind of be heard and to be seen, and then to help process certain aspects of being a man in relationship. And the tone of that is so specific. Like, if there's anybody that's listening that is wondering about the value of men meeting with men, women meeting with women, the way that we're speaking right now, I mean, and if our partners were around, I think the conversation that we're having right now would be okay. But there's a certain tone and a certain vulnerability that we can take when there aren't women that are witnessing. There's complicated things, complicated energies that happen, and whether it's the mothering energy that women are susceptible to, or the bravado, kind of like the being a little bit stronger than we actually are, and through words and through emotions that men take on in order to avoid that mother projection themselves of wanting to be mothered, and the wounds that we carry, that we're wanting to be nurtured. So to be in the proximity of women when we're being vulnerable it's a very complex thing, and there's just so much beauty to be explored, and deep spiritual,
Yeah.
let's say, just mysterious aspects of these men's circles and women's circles, and of course, coming together is a beautiful thing too. But yeah, um,
There is beauty in kind of sitting with other men. I'm sure there's beauty with women sitting with women. I think eventually we have to, like, okay, it's one thing to do it here, while I'm sitting with men, but can I bring that into my relationship with my kids? Can I bring that into the relationship, the growth, not, I may not be able to do the same things that I may may be doing in the men's group, but can I bring that growth? Can I bring that solidness and that groundedness that I may experience in the men's group? Can I bring that in my relationships
mhm,
with women, with other men as well? Because the other thing, I don't know if you've noticed, right? Like there are men that don't care about self-reflection, at least in
mhm,
my judgment, I guess,
mhm,
that are not willing to put in the effort to go sit in a group, or go work through whatever they need to work through, and they're just not open to that.
mhm,
But I still need to have a relationship with them, in
mhm,
right, and so can I still bring that modeling there? Forget with other women, but can I, at
mhm,
least as a man, can I bring it with another man? And still, even if we don't have that same solid, kind of understanding of how we're going to communicate, can I still hold my truth there when they don't see the value in how the wisdom I may be bringing, my own struggles, all of those things? They might not see the
mhm.
value in it, but can I hold that solid ground for them, that
Yeah,
when they're ready, maybe when they're ready, that right? Like, I think I think it's still important to be able to say, okay, whatever we're doing in these closed group, we're able to bring it out in the open. and grow from it, right? And then bring it back, say, oh, I hit this spot. Now let's talk about that. And then
Mm-hmm.
again, continue to bring that out. So,
Yeah. I had the pleasure and fortune of seeing. I've only seen it once in my life. It was a gathering of ravens. It's a while ago. Yeah, perhaps it was crows actually, and they had gathered in a perfect circle. They're all flying in this really sacred gathering, and then they started to go off one by one. They would leave the circle, and they'd all go off in different directions. I've never seen that before or since.
mm,
And so it's symbolic of, when we're gathering in circle, whether it's a men's circle, a women's circle, or a mixed circle, whether it's with medicine or no medicine or just drums or just talking. A circle is a sacred space for those
mm,
gatherings. And then, yeah, we go back into our lives with something to bring from that circle to our people
yeah.
and to the people that we just, run into once in our lifetime at McDonald's in a brief conversation or exchange. It could be anywhere.
Mm.
It could be
Yeah,
anywhere,
yeah.
anytime.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the integration is the key, right? Like, can I integrate this into my day-to-day life? Not, because, otherwise it becomes like, I'm not comparing it to like any kind of religious rituals or whatnot. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
many of us just do religion as an activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we live our lives as an activity. We go to work as an activity. But it's like nothing ever gets integrated. Nothing ever is like, Faizan at work is a totally Faizan in a men's group.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be me, right? And that used to be, for many years while I was attending group, it used to be these different personalities. And at some point it's like, okay, that can't be. I want to show up as much as I can, authentically as I can, in both places, uh, and
Mm-hmm.
and so to allow for those, I think that's been the greatest benefit and greatest growth in any circle, right? Whether it's men only, combined groups, drum circles, anything, is can I be hopefully be the same guy. If not the same guy, if I learn something, can I put that into practice into my day-to-day life?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's for me has been the key growth, if
Yeah.
I can identify that.
I never grew up with religion. What are the benefits of religion, and the doctrine, possibly dogma? What is it about religion that speaks to you and that keeps you in that realm, thinking of it as a compartmentalized space separate from spirituality that has a more general flavor, let's say?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, lately I'm trying to actually combine the two, right? not not
Okay.
uh not be like, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, or I'm spiritual. It's like, no, we could be both. I think
Mm-hmm.
for a benefit, that's an interesting question. What came to mind was that common language, place to belong, and
Mm-hmm.
it has nothing to do with faith, right? It's not the faith or the what we're being taught. Is like there's a certain value that a group of people say, okay, we believe in, and
Mm-hmm.
that thread ties us together, right? It's okay, it holds us together. And so I know that sense of belonging is important. Obviously, we've all heard of stories. Doesn't matter the faith or the religion, of stories of even belonging, but then not feeling like you belong because of certain, uh, whatever might be happening with life, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I know those parts exist, and not condoning any of that, but part of it is just having that common language and common understanding that says, you know what, if I call on somebody, they'll just show up because
Mm-hmm.
we just belong to the same faith. We might not know each other, and and I've experienced that in my life, and I'm hoping I've also provided that for other people. But I know I've experienced that in my life when we first moved to Chicago, right? Like where I know my mom was looking for
Mm-hmm.
guidance around schools, and she was able to find some things through that community. And then there were other things she found out, and then she brought that back to the community. Not, like to say, okay, hey, here's how we can get into better schools. All of those types of things were important. right? And not because we knew each other, we belonged to the same family, but we just believed in the same thing. And that was enough to say, you know what, yes, I can help you, and I can show up for you. So I find that sense of community, that to be important, and I hope, people, whatever faith traditions they belong to, they focus on that more and more, is uh, is building community, because we're not meant to. I think lately, this modern society, we've so isolated ourselves that, my partner, if if I have a partner, if I choose to have a partner, it has to be everything for me. My
Hmm.
kids have to be everything for me, and whereas community used to be that, right? Like the one person didn't have to hold everything. And so I'm
Hmm.
hoping, whether it's through faith traditions or other communities, that we're bringing that back. We're bringing a sense of belonging and community, and not that otherness, right? Well,
Hmm.
Mark, you belong to a different faith. Okay, fine, but you and I share a certain value, and that I
Hmm.
hope I can show up for you, and I know you will show up for me,
Hmm.
because of that sameness, and then say that value, not focus on the otherness.
Hmm. Interesting. There's a lot of people in the world, and to be a part of what I would define as a sacred village. But in the future, this vision of the sacred village, it's not necessarily people with the same spiritual practice. That doesn't seem to be necessary. But there is this principle of, like, you can get too many people, where too many people. And if you're wanting to be in something cohesive, we do have to sacrifice certain tethers or connections as primary. For my family, I feel is perhaps is
Mm-hmm.
similar to your relationship with family, where there's a lot of love and connection, but in a way, they're my family, and so you get together with them, and it's really unique, and there's a connection, and there's a trust, and there's a built-in responsibility there. But at the same time, they're not my people as I would define my people. Like, there's not really that common spiritual foundation, just being spiritual, and also, the similar values and the similar vision of wanting to have a more cohesive community. There's self-actualization, community actualization, and then cultural continuity. That cultural continuity, I wonder what it looks like in 200 years, because, like you, for example, you have these spiritual communities, and, there's the men's circle, and then you have the Muslim community, that circle that you're with, and both seem to be a part of your purpose and being, and in terms of connection. Do you ever see as a vision, those communities somehow being a part of the same community, somehow being a part of the same resource system, or is that not really practical? Because then we get into that issue of too many people. Like, there's 20,000 people in Salmon Arm. We can't possibly know and be responsible and have connection with all of them. It's just not sustainable or viable. So yeah, there's decisions that need to be made. What are your feelings around that?
Well, there's always groups, right? Like, there's groups you will belong to. So even within, I mean, you say the Muslim community, but the Muslim community has so many different factions,
Yeah,
right,
of
as well.
course. Yep.
And even within the community, within the community that I belong, yeah, within the community I belong to, even there doesn't mean I know of everybody, right? I know everybody. There, even there's a group of people that I feel close to, right, and that I would consider, I guess, quote unquote, a tribe, right? But I think it's this, can we, whatever communities we belong to, right? So, even within a smaller circle, within a religious circle, within a larger context of a cultural or a country, within a larger context of the world, right? All of those, the smaller circles that we belong to, at the end of the day, I mean, for me at least, my belief system is that there is oneness, there's unified field, and either I'm aligned to that or I'm misaligned to that field.
Hmm.
And so, can I bring the same values through those? So I'm not, the values that I speak of in a men's circle, I'm hoping it's not a different, because I don't know if I do it or not. So I'm, what does it say? Might be doing it unconsciously. So, but I'm hoping I am the same. I'm speaking the same values. I'm not trying to divide within my religious circle to say, oh, those people. No, if I believe in
Mm-hmm.
unified consciousness, I'm hoping in any circle that I sit, I'm talking about it as a unified circle. And yes, I may
Mm-hmm.
not belong to that larger circle. I don't feel like I need to belong to every circle, but if
Mm-hmm.
uh, that circle doesn't need to be judged as something less than or greater than, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's the way I try to navigate. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're just following, your heart, sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a piece, right? And even at
Mm-hmm.
the expansion project, that's what we talk about, right? Like, there's these two states. You're either aligned or you're misaligned, and
Mm-hmm.
and then the second concept is that you have sovereign agency, and through that sovereign agency, you can decide. And all of us talk about this, and I especially talk about this. Like, if you're gonna choose to be misaligned, know that it's your choice. Choose it,
Mm-hmm.
but know you're making that choice, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very aware of those choices that I make when I'm misaligned. But because
Mm-hmm.
if it's not a choice, if it's just, well, I just do it because my mom told me to when I was little,
Mm-hmm.
and I just continue
Mm-hmm.
doing it, then it's like a get out of jail free card because, well, my mom told me to do it, or Mark told me to do it this way. Well, no, I
Mm-hmm.
got to make choices in life, and how I'm going to show up in this world, and either be aligned or misaligned, and that
Mm-hmm.
I have sovereign agency, and then you also have sovereign agency. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to try to control, but I can still hold the same values, right? So
Yeah, totally. If there's information or signifiers when we're misaligned, because we're just not doing very well in the world. We start to get sick and not feel good or
yeah,
feel depression or, all these things that are signifying. They're all messages of, trying to get us back on track. So yeah, learning how to listen to those and respond to those and searching for the tools that we often, for me, I didn't know, I didn't have the tools that were required to get me back in alignment. I had
mm,
to search for those outside of my culture. I never would have guessed that, but then
yeah.
that was a fascinating part of my journey. But I'd like to, before we wrap it up, I want to hear more about the expansion project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that for the listeners? And yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, it's an interesting piece. We kind of started with, like, we came from two different backgrounds. And so there's what it started with, two couples, so my wife and myself, and then Syra, and then Texas and Monique, them being a couple. So when the four of us came together, again, totally different backgrounds, probably 100 years ago, would not have known each other, but through
Hmm.
circumstances and through connection, we were able to again find this certain value system, and then now our team is growing, right, like to 6 to 8 people, and really what Monique has actually written a book called The How. It's literally called The How. And it's because, we talk about these unified principles and all that, but it's like, well, how do I do it? Right? Like, everybody's like, how do I do this? And what we're hoping through Expansion Project is that we're providing uh, that solution. Like, how do I quickly get back? Okay, I know I'm misaligned. How do I quickly get back into alignment? And then look at the problem from the aligned state, because we feel like from a misaligned or contracted state, looking at the problem and trying to solve it from that state is is a fool's errand. So what
Hmm.
we're hoping is that we're looking at it from a aligned state, and the book helps us at least articulate that message, and not just like, oh, I do this as a separate thing, but how do I live that life? So how do I live that life in a corporate world, as a leader in a corporate world? So we've got some like leadership training, we've got frontline worker trainings. Again, how do I see this person that I'm serving in a tough situation? How do I see them as still as human, and still kind of, again, it's like, I know the human can have differences, but I can keep my humanity. Right. And I think for
Hmm.
us, and I know for me, that's a really, really important. So these are the messages we're bringing, is not just, I do it as an isolated thing. We believe meditations work. We believe all of these other practices work. It's just that if I, like yesterday, got into an argument with my wife. It's like, okay, how do I get back into that aligned state quickly? I cannot do a 2 hour meditation to get back into it. So how do I
Mm-hmm.
do that? And so that's our goal, is to have people learn that misalignment doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just an opportunity to get aligned, and that's really what we're teaching. And being aligned at work, being aligned in your relationships, being aligned in your service, all of those things, not just in one aspect of your life.
Right. And how to get back there in a way that you can do so at the office when you don't have time for that meditation or the broader practice.
Right. Exactly. So I think that's what we're all about. And, I mean, if nothing else, the partners were sitting around with the team, and we're like, if nothing else, we're growing through this, because, this is also bringing up challenges for us, and challenging our belief systems around work, around finances, around everything, around relationships, around what it means to be human, even. So for us, it's been such a rewarding and grateful experience, even just getting to this point.
Yeah, there's a beautiful thing with spirit. I find that people will do their work. They'll go through this threshold, and then they'll want to offer something for other people. And when they do that, they start to put their offering into the world. I can speak for myself, but I believe there's a pattern that I'm noticing here, in that if you're saying to creation that you're wanting to be a part of the solution, and you're wanting to offer yourself, your service to other people, there's a continued leveling up that's required to be of service in that way. So you're continuing to go through another threshold, even by beginning, those steps of offering this, whether it's a therapist or a podcast or, doing ceremony for people. There's constantly a required leveling up in order to provide that service in a good way. But there's also, I feel anyways, this loving consciousness that surrounds anyone with that intention. Even if that threshold will take a little bit longer than one anticipates before they get their clientele or whatever the case may be, there's still this beautiful nurturing that's happening of the individual, so they can, at that point when they're ready, offer that service and be able to be there, be of service for other people on this path. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. One of our axioms is live it before you teach it.
Yeah.
It kind of raises the accountability for us. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Live it before you teach it. And also a little bit of fake it before you make it.
Well, with spirit around, and if we're connected, hopefully we're not faking it too much.
It's a balance. So there's got to be that humility and acceptance of ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, any closing words here, Faizan, before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, just thank you for inviting me. These conversations are, I think, important to have, and if I can, we've been talking about this otherness piece, and I believe most of us have 95% in common, and the 5% is the different. And I'm hoping we can now focus on that 95% and really, really connect with our aligned state, where the unified field and our spirits can actually thrive, rather than going through in fear of others. We can be discerning, but we don't have to fear each other.
Totally. And I would just add to that, for the listeners who are minorities, or feeling like they're somehow not a part of a more unified way of being, and I want to be careful with my words. Unified way of being. What does that mean? I think what I mean is modalities that where your history, your lineage, your race mean absolutely nothing in terms of whether or not you would be invited and accepted into these types of circles. So, the men's circles and the women's circles and these ceremonies of common ground, these gatherings of common ground just being that there's an interest in being connected to something that's evolving, something that's new, something that's definitely spiritual, and that is helping us find a deeper part of ourselves and that commonality. There's a lot of healing, and there's a new village that's rising, and we will have smaller villages, but there will be a larger, there will be that cultural continuity someday. There isn't today, but there will be someday. And I think that the unified field, or whatever you want to call it, I just extending that invitation to anybody listening that feels any trepidation about stepping into that space. It's like, oh no, you're welcome. You're very welcome. And well, thank you very much, Faizan. I'm going to try your last name again. Sabzaali?
You got it.
Okay, Faizan Sabzaali. Thank you so much, brother. This is, the Expansion Project, theexpansionproject.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's theexpansionproject.com.
Okay, and we'll have that in the text and the show notes as well, so... Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. This is Mark A. Lewis, Sacred Village Podcast. Have a beautiful day. Over and out.
I lay my head down.
Check out my lovely partner's music, Christina Jessen, at christinajessen.com. And there's also more information on what we're doing. We're doing a land project up here, traditional land development with a community intention. And if you're interested in any of the retreats that we're a part of and part of organizing, you can find all that information at sacredvillagepodcast.com. Have a wonderful day.
Floating